Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to start. We had a tight schedule. It's even tighter right now. So before I start with the opening ceremony, I would like to introduce the person. There will be no big hernia event in Poland without him, okay? So, Maciej Śmietański, please.
Thank you very much. Mateusz will say everything in his speech. I just would like to say thank you all for coming and to fulfill the legacy of our assassinated president. I would like to say our city is sharing the good. Gdańsk dzieli się dobrem. Thank you very much.
Okay. First of all, on behalf of Maciej and myself, I would like to thank you all for attending Baltic Hernia Days. As you can see, number of participants are great. It far exceeded our expectations, to be honest. We had done all we could to make sure that everyone can enjoy the Congress. We have invited the finest lecturers from all over the world, created, I believe, a great scientific program. Also, we prepared other attractions for the guests, you will see later on. We wanted to create a platform for Baltic countries to communicate and work together in hernia surgery and perhaps maybe even make this event a frequent activity. The list of VIPs, believe me, is very long. I don't want to exploit your patience, but I have to mention some of them. So we have the president of the Associations of Polish Surgeons, Professor Krzysztof Zieniewicz. We have the, yes, you can clap. We have the president of the European Hernia Society, Mr. Maarten Simmons. Also, we have a former General Secretary of EHS, Andrew de Beaux. Please welcome Andrew. And many, many other distinctive guests, almost all board members of Hernia Society, Barbara East, Mette Willeme, Frederick Bevere, Hakan Gok, Philip Meissens, Johan Renard, Sonia Ribas, Hernia superstars, Jan Kukleta, Marc Miserez, Todd Heniford, Yuri Nowicki, David Chen, guests from all over Baltic countries, Hannu Pajanen, we got Alan Aim, Lina Zamkowski. Also, I'd like to greet Professor Banasiewicz, Professor Crispin Mitura, Professor Viktor Radu, Maciej Pawlak, Professor Moshe Dudaj, Professor Dąbrowiecki, Jacek Szopiński. I would like to greet Marcin Wodarczyk, Professor Szczepkowski, Professor Shura, Marta Wójcik. Believe me or not, the list is much longer, but the Congress has to go on. I would only like to give a special welcome to our friends from Ukraine who have attended the Congress in great numbers. We are really happy to have you, and we want to show you that we are with you in these awful times created by the Russian terrorists. I would like to also greet my former general surgery teachers, Dr. Jerzy Ropel, Dr. Bartosz Sławiński, who have been nothing but support for me. Thank you very much for this. And I would also like to greet the industry. Without you, we wouldn't be able to create such a great event, I hope. Thank you for everything. And before we start the main event, I would like you to put on the presentations. I would like to share with you, show you a brief presentation of what happened during the last year in the hernia chapter of the Associations of Polish Surgeons, what we achieved, what we have done, and also what we are willing to do in the nearest future. So our new structure established in September 2023, this is our board, and it is great, fantastic working with you all. I had taken the role of the chairman after Maciej Śmietański, who has been doing tremendous work in Polish, not only, of course, hernia field, and is something that we can call national good. He is also man responsible for teaching me and making me who I am, so any complaints go to Maciej. You can definitely consider him as a godfather or, spiritus movens of the whole thing that happened so far, and we believe that a lot has happened, really. So right now, we have 180 members from 190 centers from all over the Poland. We have conducted 31 courses and workshops under the patronage of Hernia Chapter. All news regarding Hernia Chapter are published via our newsletter, which we also have created. We have created a Facebook group that has gathered 450 members. This is a place where we can share our hernia ideas, we can share our problems, discuss important issues. We have created a series of webinars called Hernia Blast, which appear to be a great success as well, with mean attendance about 150 to 200 participants per webinar. The topics of webinar were voted by the members of the hernia chapter. That's not all. We have created a YouTube channel where you can put all the hernia-related movies from operating theaters, from congresses, and so on. We have conducted a number of workshops, both theoretical, both practical, with almost 200 surgeons involved in the process. We have sent a delegation to the Ukraine to conduct workshops in Lviv, in Ivano-Frankivsk, to be a part of a conference in Yaremcha. Show support, and we are with Ukrainian friends in the times of this terrible war. We tried to be present at every major event in Poland with our hernia chapter stand. Also, we were presented in the EHS Congress in Prague, as you can see in the bottom. We have created series of guideline scripts on proper TAPP technique, on proper TA applications for our fellow surgeons, recommendation for patients after the surgery, and so on. This is all available via our website, which is also be renewed and rebranded. We have conducted and finished large multi-center trial study on fixation on M3 hernias. Tomorrow I will present the results during the groin hernia session. We are also proud to announce that we were able to achieve associated chapter status with the EHS as only the two organizations from all over the world, along with the Portuguese Hernia Society. We have also managed to rise the numbers of EHS members from Poland to 60, and this is just the beginning. So Greece, Austria, watch out, we're coming for you. Of course, not literally, we probably wouldn't stand a chance, but in terms of members in the EHS, I think we can manage. We have conducted first Polish cadaver master classes in surgery with outstanding faculty. It was a real pleasure, great educational value. Also, we continue our hernia discussion in Baltic Hernia Days, which was probably the first that kind activity in the world. It was also fun, to be honest. And this is not everything. We have started a second edition of the best educational program so far, I believe, called Hernia Master 2, with cooperation of B. Brown and School Up Academy. This is a course that is dedicated for surgeons who want to achieve mastery in TAPP techniques and mini-invasive repairs of front abdominal wall. Last edition was a great success. Surgeons completing it are here with us. You can ask about their experience. We are starting the next edition on 18th of November. The list of participants is closed, but the program itself consists of 4 stages. First stage is theory and working on trainers, on biological material. Then we go to participating as an assist in surgeries. Third stage is about performing an operation. Participants are performing the operation by themselves under the watch of expert. And third will be additional training in mini-invasive techniques. But we know that there is still need for more. Because Polish surgeons want to educate themselves, want to achieve mastery in hernia techniques. That's why we started another educational program called Reaching the Top, this time with Medtronic. This is the course that we are announcing right now. Details will be given soon after the Congress. Course will also consist of 4 stages, but slightly different. We start the qualification stage, which will be called the base camp. To be qualified, you have to complete the modules 2, 6, 7, and 8 from web search module Hernia Base Camp, and send us the CME certificates along with the registration form. As I said, we'll bring the details in days because we are actually announcing it right now, but everyone who will be thinking of participation can start doing hernia base camp right now. Of course, wait until the conference will be over. So that's basically it. Thank you very much for everything. Thank you again for your attendance. I hope you will have a great time here. I know I would like to ask to join us on stage Professor Krzysztof Zieniewicz, President of Association of Polish Surgeons and also the President of EHS, Professor Maarten Simmons. It is a great honor to have both of you here. Please, the floor is yours.
The guest. So, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, Maciej, Mateusz, and esteemed delegates, it's a huge honor and a pleasure to be here as a president of the EHS and endorse this fantastic meeting. The organization already is one of the best I've known and seen, and it looks a little bit like the wonderful Congress we had here in Gdansk in 2013. I am from Amsterdam, a surgeon in the middle of the city, and coming to Danzig feels like coming home. We have a huge history together. I think for a few hundred years we were one of the countries that was not trying to conquer the Polish, but traded with them. And what I've read is that we came here with about 2,000 ships per year, and we brought in bricks and architects, and we took home grain, and with that grain we made jenever in Holland. And what I also read is that jenever is the predecessor of vodka, which is made here in Poland. So not only are the Dutch linked together by architecture and the beautiful city, but also by some of the bad habits that we join. So just to start with, I've brought a beautiful old bottle of jenever for the Mateusz and Maciej. The Polish history has had its ups and downs, but we are friends, and I'm here as a friend. Maciej, I just want to spend a few words on you. I think that one of the things that EHS strives for is bringing surgeons together. We come, of course, with a bunch of knowledge and expertise. In the first few talks, we have seen all the guidelines passing by. But what our biggest role should be is to create this kind of a hernia family that wants to chat and talk about hernias while they are drinking vodka during lunch. But that's just beside the point for now. You, Maciej, you were the youngest board member in 2000 somewhere. And I remember that we were asked to write the first guidelines on groin hernia. That's when the whole project of guidelines started. And you were the science board member, and you came to me and you said, we need somebody to get all of Europe together. And actually, a lot of these first guideline members with gray hair now, Jan Kukleta and Salvador, and you know them all. We had this first project, and after that, you were, the lightning bolt with your creative mind, with your artistic character, and your expertise in science, bringing people together. And that's exactly what you and Mateusz are doing now also. So I wish everybody here a fantastic Congress, learn a lot, talk a lot, and enjoy the friendships that we have in this world of hernia. It's fantastic. Thank you very much.
Dear Professor Maciej Śmietański, dear Dr. Zamkowski, dear friends, distinguished guests from European Hernia Society, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues. First of all, I'd like to thank you very much for the privilege of participating in this fantastic meeting. It's a great honor for me, and let me address you a few words on this special occasion. I'm not a hernia surgeon. However, I appreciate very much your efforts in order to develop the hernia surgery in our country. The hernia chapter of the Association of Polish Surgeons is not only one of the most numerous, but also most active and very vivid chapters of our very old, based in 1889, Association of Polish Surgeons. I know that nowadays the herniology faces a lot of challenges. The introduction of new technologies, laparoscopic, robotic techniques, gives a lot of opportunities to improve the surgical mastery in treating our patients. according to my knowledge, the number of hernia patients per year in Poland reaches about 70,000 patients. It's very close to the number of cholecystectomies, which counts about 80 to 90,000 per year. So it's really a big challenge. And from this point of view, I appreciate very special occasions and meetings that we can gather around and discuss the important problems, all the issues regarding the herniology and hernia surgery. Coming to the end of my short talk, I would like to congratulate once again our presidents this outstanding meeting. The venue is really extraordinary. The European Center of Solidarity is an exceptional place to gather. Nevertheless, I wish you all the inspiring discussions, debates, and simply enjoy your stay in very hospitable Gdańsk. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Still, it's like this, that we have something like the opening session. What is the opening session? We really have been thinking about it, and we have chosen a very important and very distinguished speaker, and we challenge them with the topics they have never been talking about, just to make you, the audience, the pleasure to hear the best specialists in the world talking about something what is not obvious, what is maybe sometimes challenging. So let me introduce the first speaker, who is one of my mentors, who is a person who's been a president of the society. He was also the editor-in-chief of the Hernia Journal, and he's probably one of the most honest people in this world if he is talking about the science and how we do it. And it's really my pleasure, Marc, to introduce you, because this is a special person. If I will talk about the people they have influenced my life, Marc is one of them. Marc, please go on stage.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It's indeed, like Maciej said, it's a great honor for me to give this opening lecture of this huge meeting. And I think looking at this crowd, looking at those two chairmen and this faculty in the first row, this can only be a great success and the start of a series. And so it's not the Baltic Hernia Days, but it's the first Baltic Hernia Days. Let me try to show the first slide with the title, and I must say, when I received this title from Maciej, I had to think twice, because where is the truth in hernia surgery is not, let's say, an everyday topic that you would expect. I maybe will not say a joke, but I will move to my second slide, and my second slide indeed shows that the place where we are, this European Center of Solidarity, is, let's say, for me also an extraordinary place. This is a place of history. This is the place where at the end of the 70s and the beginning of the 80s, Lech Walesa and the shipyards really changed Europe. And I have learned before, and this was confirmed today, that this is really indeed the place where that triggered the fall of the Berlin Wall in '89. So I think historically, this is really a very extraordinary place, and I think we should always be remembered about this, not only in the near, but also in the future on the long term. The other slide I wanted to show, and I will go quickly when you see it, is just a tribute to Maciej Śmietański. We know each other for more than 20 years. We've done a lot of things together, and I think the merit also comes from him. It went really in both directions. We've done a lot of science together. We've been on the ski slopes. We've been in Spain at the beach in Los Caños. I think you're really a true friend, Maciej. We know a lot of each other, professionally and privately. And again, it's really a very, very big honor, ladies and gentlemen, to be invited by this great team. My third slide, which will come up, I think, in a few moments, because then I will be completely lost. Thank you very much. My third slide are my disclosures. And the disclosures are, it's a first truth in surgery or in hernia surgery that I want to share with you. And very often, thank you very much. So this is indeed Lech Walesa. This was really indeed the trigger of the fall of the Berlin Wall, and it happened really here at the shipyards at this really very, very spot. This is my dear friend. This is my dear friend Maciej with some pictures from the last 20 years in private and professional circumstances. So these are my disclosures, ladies and gentlemen, and as I just told you, we go sometimes very, very quickly over this slide. And this is already my first truth. When you present, when you publish, I think you should give a full disclosure of any conflict of interest that might bias your work or that might be seen by you, by the audience, to influence your work. So I think this is already... This is stereo, thank you. This is already a very important message that I want to bring. So when I got this title from Maciej, I went to Paris to Auguste Rodin and his Le Penseur, the thinker, and I said, okay, what will I do? I will give my opinion, which is counting, of course, for now. That might change, might not be your opinion, but I'm very happy to go into debate later on with you. And of course, as everything in life, ladies and gentlemen, what I will say and what happens in our lives is not black and white. A lot is gray, and I think we should take this also into account. Now, if we talk about truth, the question is, of course, the truth for whom? The patient, the surgeon, the payer, the society, the computer, if we talk about AI, or industry. And I think we all agree that, of course, the first and overall truth is for the patient, especially with patient empowerment becoming correctly so important, with shared decision-making becoming correctly so important in this decennium. I think we should really talk about who are we taking care of, and this is, of course, the patient overall. The truth for this patient, ladies and gentlemen, it's quality. It's clinical, effective work, it's patient safety, and it's an excellent patient experience. So what are quality issues for this hernia patient that we encounter every day? It's recurrence, it's wound complications, surgical site occurrences, as you can see, even mortality. People can still die from a complication, quality of life, chronic pain, functionality, and so on. And what is often forgotten is to ask the patient him or herself. So patient-reported outcomes, patient-reported experience are becoming more and more important. And I'll come back to that in the end of my lecture. What is also often forgotten if we talk about cost is, what is the cost for the patient, him or herself? What will the patient pay if we talk about new techniques, if we talk about new meshes, if we talk about new devices? What do we charge to the patient? Because this is also a factor of quality for the patient. But ultimately, of course, it's about value. We became medical doctor, we became surgeon to create the highest quality at the lowest cost for society. I think a very easy paradigm for your therapeutic plan, and I say it very often to my students, is try to treat the patient in front of you as if he or she is your partner, your child, or your parent, someone you really care about, because we should also, of course, care about our patients. I'm not saying you should treat the patient like your mother-in-law, but we can discuss again that at a later stage. Before going to the Western world, I would like to show you two slides on my truth in the low or the lower and middle income countries. Those in pink, those in purple, as you can see, which is a very large part of Africa. Many of us have been there for humanitarian missions to try to do something which makes a difference, maybe not on a macro level, but on a micro level. And for me personally, And I agree completely with Ralph Laurenz about that. It's the price of commercial mesh, we know, in Africa is too high. But we also know that the sterilization cost, or the sterilization at all, of the low-cost mosquito meshes is not ideal. We have shrinkage of polyethylene. We don't know exactly what happens after sterilization with the physical-chemical properties. And I think we cannot afford any more than going for this single possible solution. We should lobby as persons, as societies, that the commercially available meshes are cheaper for their use in Africa, and that they should be produced locally. This is at least my personal truth, and in the next few years that I still will be professionally active, I will want to work on that also. If we talk about hernia care, of course, the best is to prevent hernias, because then we will be home much earlier than we are now in the evening. And prevention, as we all know, is better than cure. And we also know, as Hans Jekel from Rotterdam has been saying over and over and over again, closing time of the laparotomy, it's not coffee time. You should be there, you should teach, you should guide, or you should do it yourself. So try to close the door properly, please. Now, one more slide on hernia prevention. We have, of course, less control, ladies and gentlemen, because it's the gynecologist or the vascular surgeon or the urologist or the first-year resident who will close the box. So we have to keep on going on investing in education for laparotomy closure for all these people that we see very rarely in our own departments. All types of surgeons, all types of gynecologists, consultants, and in training. And if we work on a mesh procedure or a prophylactic procedure, I think we need to keep it simple. And I think we have substantial evidence now that a simple onlay mesh, self-adhesive or non-self-adhesive, can do the job without too many circular site occurrences. And this is simple. This is something that a gynecologist can and will do, especially if it's self-adhering. This is something that a colorectal surgeon at the end of the surgery will do because it's fast. Not a retromuscular, not an intraperitoneal mesh. What about suture line reinforcement with this mesh suture? Well, few papers are coming up, but of course this could become my truth or the truth if we find a kind of a mesh suture which really decreases the incidence of incisional hernia dramatically. Another thing I think which is important and which we have not substantially investigated, also not for peristomal hernia, we shouldn't probably do it in all patients. But we should use a kind of a risk prediction, a risk calculator, like this one from the University of Pennsylvania, to check which patients really need something extra prophylactically. And apart from the classical demographic risk factors, as you see them here, and which were nicely depicted in this paper by Philippe, in the next few 10 years, I believe, we will move to precision medicine, personalized medicine, based on genes, based on individual variations in the environment and lifestyle. Our children, our grandchildren, they will have a kind of a passport on their health, and probably this should be taken into account on deciding when and whom to prophylactically treat. Another issue I want to share with you briefly is the issue on contamination and new hernia meshes. I believe there is a lot of talking around and writing around, and I don't like it. Let's move back to the early 80s. When we went to a congress, there was the hype of the biological mesh. The biological mesh as temporary abdominal wall support, the biological mesh remodeling with high quality, well-organized collagen, the biological mesh leading to the most strong and functional abdominal wall, and even with an acceptable number of surgical site occurrences in patients with contamination. We all know what happened in the last 20 years. We are back to reality, and biological mesh almost has disappeared from the market, as you can see in this editorial. And why is that? Because biological mesh didn't work, firstly. Secondly, because we keep on mixing contamination and clean contamination. And why is that? Because this CDC classification, ladies and gentlemen, wasn't made for hernia surgeons. This CDC classification should be translated to our patients where we deal with hernia and contamination. And to my opinion, this is what is clean contamination. Bowel lesion without gross spillage, bowel resection without gross spillage, and concurrent cholecystectomy, the presence of a stoma. This is for me clean contamination, and we should agree on that in some consensus meetings. What I also strongly believe as my truth is that in those patients, You can simply get away with a permanent synthetic mesh. This is not only my truth, this is also in this paper of the World Society of Emergency Surgery. We have level 1 evidence that you don't need any fancy meshes, even not in the most complex hernia without contamination. We can simply not prove currently that the complex hernia without contamination should be treated with another mesh than a clean hernia. It becomes more complex, of course, when we talk about contamination or dirty environment. This is again my definition, as you can see here. I didn't check that with my colleagues, key opinion leaders, but at least that's what I think. And here indeed, we really don't know which mesh to use. Synthetic permanent, synthetic slowly absorbable, biologic, and so on and so on. And we all know that slowly absorbable synthetic meshes, as the ones you see here on the picture, they came on the market with the same goal as a biological mesh, at a much lower, but still a very high cost. I will not go into detail because I only have 20 minutes, but you can already see what I mean. I have a déjà vu feeling with the biologics of 20 years ago. And so this is why I believe we need prospective head-to-head comparative mesh studies in patients in contamination or dirty setting with at least a follow-up after this slowly resorbable mesh has disappeared completely. Only then we will try to get some more scientifically evident answers, I believe. Few slides on the truth in new technologies. Crispin, this is a slide I took from your paper, your wonderful paper published 4 years ago, with all the different minimal invasive techniques that can be used for ventral hernias. You can do them laparoscopically, you can do them with a robot. And believe it or not, I just turned 60, and this is my image yesterday at the simulator of the robot, because I will still embark on this procedure for the next 5-6 years. Don't look at my face, and especially don't look at my score on the left side of the screen, because I didn't do so well for that simulation. Anyhow, what do I want to say is we have encountered new questions, new scientific questions when we treat minimally invasive hernias. And for instance, I completely agree with Igor Beliansky, who wrote, "We believe that approximation of the posterior rectus sheath is important and reloads the semilunar line, conserving the shape of the rectus abdominis muscle, which may lead to improved postoperative cosmesis and abdominal wall function." I agree 300%, but nor me, myself, or Igor, we can currently prove that. But for me, this is my truth. Do the same thing as in an open reef stop-up procedure, close the posterior rectus sheath. This is a patient where the posterior rectus sheath was torn postoperatively and who came to me, and indeed intraoperatively the posterior rectus sheath was completely blown up with this result clinically. If we talk about new techniques, ladies and gentlemen, I think this is also a very important question we often don't dare to ask. How much morbidity or even mortality are we ready to accept during a learning curve? And at which cost? For whom? So I invite you to look at this paper published in the Journal of Pediatric Surgery, but it's exactly the same in adults, to look at expertise, technical skills, informed consent, and so on, before embarking on a new procedure. I think ethically we have to go to submit our protocols if we go to a new procedure or a new mesh, to go to our local IRB and even to an international repository like clinical trials, because then the world knows what we are doing and we need to give a result. We need to be responsible for what we are doing, even in our single hospital with a new technique or a new mesh. And this brings me with almost one of the last parts of my lecture, which is analysis of outcomes, because we need to know how we perform versus our colleagues, versus our peers. We need to audit, because if you cannot measure, you cannot improve. And for me, the truth in outcome evaluation, it's this. You need to be part of a well-functioning, high-quality registry, whether it's any place in the world. You see some examples. Because if you add data to a database and you get risk-adjusted outcomes and feedback, then only you can get better. And you can benchmark yourself with your colleagues. Because feedback in this process that I just showed is critical. And not only feedback, ladies and gentlemen, but constructive feedback. If you don't get feedback as a participant of a registry, you will abandon. You will say, forget it, those bloody people with their presentations and publications, I don't care. So feedback, for me, in a good, well-functioning registry is critical to a long-term sustainability of the registry. And again, 2 slides on my truth on registries. I think it should be compulsory. Compulsory registration, like almost done in the Scandinavian countries. I think it's not unethical to link participation to a registry, which has nothing to do with results, but participation of a registry to a payment of the part of the surgical fee. I'm strongly in favor of that. It needs to be high quality registry, of course. You need to keep it simple for the surgeon, and this is why I personally believe you have to minimize surgical input during follow-up. Why? Minimal workload for the busy surgeon, minimize bias by the surgeon who has operated that very patient, and the higher compliance rate. And we all know that the bottleneck in registries, even good functioning registries, it's the follow-up. We should get away, I believe, from clinical outcome data, or not only clinical outcome data, but include questionnaires, include PROMs, include PREMs, and use administrative or billing data to merge everything together and take the workload on the follow-up away from the burden of the surgeon. Of course, a good source data verification is crucial to ensure the validity of your registry, because otherwise it makes no sense. We need to work together on number and definition of variables. SSO, SSI, SSOPI. What does it mean? It's the same in North Carolina as in Leuven, as in Dansk. So we better agree on those definitions. I also strongly believe, my truth, that we need a quality of care level, which is very simple, a minimal number of variables, and a more detailed registry level for research purposes for the diehards around. And as I said a few moments ago, you have to include feedback, but also a remediation trajectory. You cannot simply say to somebody, your results are bad, forget it. You need to help them to get better. And only, ladies and gentlemen, if we have a registry, if we have feedback, if we have implemented a remediation trajectory, then only we can talk about certification and centralization. But only then and not earlier. So the brave new hernia world, for me, this is what we have now. Evidence is mainly focused on randomized controlled trials and very less on registries. This leads to guidelines, and we have to show still that guidelines improve patient outcome, and then the circle is round. I think in the near future, the quality and the validity and the role of registries will increase dramatically in creating evidence that will feed our guidelines. What about the role of artificial intelligence surgery? One single slide. One single slide with big data on pre-operatively, on operatively, and on the post-operative phase, on pattern recognition, on creation of algorithms, and on predictive techniques, so that a real-time decision support becomes possible for the surgeon. Not only for robotic surgery, that's easy, we can gather easily data, but also for open surgery. And so I believe strongly that this circle needs to be supplemented by AI-supported, risk-adjusted clinical decision support models. And of course, I hope together with you that those will improve outcome. Of course, everything I discussed with you and a lot of what will be discussed here is on evidence. But we as surgeons, we have to find a balance between evidence-based medicine and experience-based medicine. And that's not always very easy because surgeons are special persons. We decide about life and death sometimes, we have our complications, and being an excellent technical surgeon does not mean you are an excellent surgeon overall. So I quote what Marwaha wrote 3 years ago in the British Journal, and I think it's very, very true. We must be decisive in the face of uncertainty, ladies and gentlemen, but our confidence must always remain tempered by humility as human being. And personally, related to hernia, I consider almost every hernia recurrence, also my own, as a result of a technical error in the large majority of cases. I'm coming to an end. Mateusz, hernia specialty. We all agree that in some circumstances, and you will see much more impressive pictures later on, this is really a specialty. This is not just a hernia. And we can only applaud the European Hernia Society and the UMS that have installed this European Board of Surgery certification for abdominal wall surgery, which really, again, stresses that this is really becoming a true specialty. Despite that, I think even for a simple inguinal hernia, every surgical department needs 1 or 2 surgeons with a special interest in the abdominal wall. We have to invest in networks with colleagues, social media platforms, regional networks, compare data, standardization of protocols, case discussions, patient referrals, but not without trust. You need trust and transparency in the network, otherwise your collaboration is really doomed to fail. And of course, as Maciej said, I'm ending with one slide on publishing. As a former editor of Hernia, I couldn't let this go without one slide on publishing. I believe my truth is that this is a joint responsibility of authors, reviewers, editors, and readership. We should invest much more in post-publication review, number 1, and number 2, statistics and multivariate statistics, advanced statistics on big data become so important that we cannot do this alone. Open access and APCs, I have a problem with that, and you can see it on the slides. I wonder if peer review is always so rigorous and of high quality if we know that every accepted paper will lead to a higher income for somebody somehow. I have my doubts. I think we should ban scientific misconduct, and again, as I started my lecture, we should have a full disclosure of any conflict of interest. Here also, artificial intelligence can play an important role in the next few years to come. Ladies and gentlemen, my truth in hernia surgery is the following. It has given me in the past 25 years many, many happy patients, fortunately. Unique research opportunities, thanks to all, thanks to the European Hernia Society for that, but most of all, a wonderful network of hernia friends. And especially those 2 people I would like to thank very, very much. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Marc. To be honest, when Maciej proposed this topic, I was unaware what he had in mind. He only said, truth in hernia surgery, Marc will do it. And when the time of the Congress approached, I asked him, will you write, Marc, what you had in mind? No, he will know. And as always, you know. Thank you very much. It is my big pleasure to announce the next speaker, our friend from Turkey, Istanbul, creator and director of Hernia Istanbul Institute. Besides great expertise and knowledge, is also a person who is always willing to help, support. He's also probably the most important person in hernia surgery, as he's the chief of the social media wing in EHS. And when we all know the power of the social media, he can destroy any of us with just one post. Of course, he wouldn't, but he can. Remember that. Ladies and gentlemen, Hakan Gok. Thank you very much.
Hey. Thank you very much for nice introduction. So I'm also very thankful for having me in this prestigious Congress. So it's what a great presence of the people that is 3 past presidents of the American Hernia Society, 3 past of and the current president of the European Hernia Society, half of the European Hernia Society board member, and you esteemed, colleagues. Also, president of the Polish Surgical Society. So my talk is that, I will seek answer to this question. Is there a sense in creating supranational organization in surgery? So here you see my disclosures. My non-financial disclosure is I'm a board member of the European Hernia Society, and I will heavily promote the European Hernia Society, and my talk is based for the EHS. So you see that it's an advantage and disadvantage of having a supranational organization. There are many advantages, also some limitations. It's outlined. And let's look at the EHS example. So EHS was founded in 1979 in Paris. You see these hernia legends, these French surgeons, and with the name of Grepa, and it became in the international level as the EHS GREPA in Germany in June 1998. And with the new brand, new logo, it became EHS in January 2021. And we have currently more than 3,000 members and also 29 affiliated societies in the countries. So EHS is, the main driving business is improving the patients with a hernia. And you see the EHS board. We have also half of the board is here with the presence. Also, EHS works with the wings, advisory boards, what we call them as the wings. We have several wings such as, website and social media and education, quality, as well as we have the JAWS board, as well as the UEMS board. And we collaborate with also the important one, the new one is the patient advisory board. So we work with the important stakeholder of the hernia surgery is the patients. So you see the benefits of the EHS membership. There are many advantages of becoming a EHS member. So we will check them what opportunities be and what activities EHS doing. So hernia guidelines, it is the most important business of the European Hernia Society is, creating guideline groups, and the guidelines first started in 2009, published, and current President Maarten has, great endeavor for having guidelines. And you can access all the guidelines by clicking this link. There is a link here in this QR code. So recently we published them in the open access. Here you can reach very freely, and you don't need any subscription to the society. So if you are a EHS member, you can also go through the member site and access them to the fund. So EHS also running a registry. It's very important. Two registries we are running is the EHS hernia registry and the open abdomen registry. It's free to upload your cases to the EHS if you are a member. So why don't you contribute to the hernia knowledge by uploading your cases to the EHS registries? So another important activity of the EHS is, annual congresses. Yes, the next congress in Paris. Just watch. The president of the Paris is Johan Renard. I've lost that. The theme is back to the origins, EHS was founded in France. I'm going back. Thank you. And you see our upcoming Congress next year in early June. We are in Paris, other year Porto, then in 2021 Antwerp, and 2021 in Beaux. So also EHS organized monothematic congresses. First started in 2018 in Lviv, Ukraine, and then pandemic we stopped. We made a break, and we started again last year in Vilnius. And then last week we performed this third one in Sofia, and one of the congresses. The topic was inguinal hernias. In Vilnius it was ventral hernias. And we are accepting the applications for the host for 2025. You can still make application. We accept it. It's not out of the date. So it's important to, having cadaveric courses to learn hernia. Anatomy is very important. So best you can learn in the cadaveric courses. EHS recently focused on most the cadaveric courses in organizing many cadaveric courses. And in another promotion video,
the EHS educational pathway is an ambitious project to standardize training in hernia surgery.
When you want to be the best. You have to learn from the best and then do it a little bit better. And this course gives you this opportunity.
It's quite nice to know that the people there, all the doctors, all the faculties are just people as we. They are not like gods and they are not untouchable, but they are actually very nice.
I will to improve my knowledge. I think that's a really good opportunity.
I hope that EHS can offer the best education in the world for abdominal wall surgery. I hope it will be the natural place for a young surgeon to go to learn these techniques. And I hope that we in the future will be able to put the EHS stamp of quality on surgeons that have been through our pathway.
I will take the advanced course in the future. I think the robotic surgery is the future.
Be prepared to learn, be prepared to meet new friends, and then finally be prepared to have a good time.
I just love education. I love seeing people acquire new skills and achieve mastery. That's what I love to see.
You can see all the courses in the EHS website. So this year we organized this. This month is very busy. There are so many academic courses in Europe. So you'll see this. We are organizing robotic courses, intermediate cadaveric master classes, and advanced ones, and also MIS cadaveric courses. This next year's program we have two more, but we will have more. So we also co-organize the courses with the industry partners such as robotic pre-congress courses, discovery course, as well as the ventral abdominal robotic surgery courses. It's in a regular basis. So EHS also provides grants for the research and the travels, and you can apply them. We yearly give more than 10 grants in research grants and the travel grants. You can visit in a hernia center in Europe if you are EHS member. So we provide, if you document your charge, we provide up to this amount of the money. So it's importance is the abdominal wall surgery became a subspecialty and it is recognized by the European UEMS, and we run the application process and the qualification and the test during the EHS annual congress. So we have a committee for this. Also, board member is responsible from this certification. In COVID time, we did, EHS journal clubs, and we recorded them and upload to our YouTube channel. You can reach them. Other activities, we have members area in the Facebook group. There are members here. It's some silent, but we expect more energy in the group and discuss the case. If you come, if you are a EHS member or if you want to be, please join to our Facebook group. So EHS monthly deliver to the members to the newsletter. We are, informing our members about the activities, upcoming activities, and the news. Also, EHS has its own journal. It's created by the EHS. It is PubMed and Scopus indexed, and it is in review process for the impact factor. Hopefully, we're gonna get it soon. So, JOS is our kit. So it has social media presence. We always post what newly published in the JOS. So we also have strategic partnership with other organizations such as BGS Society. There is advantage for the EHS members. Publication APC reduction, almost 50% to the BGS and the BGS Open. Also, we do collaborated educational sessions with them. And the video recordings are also in our YouTube page. Also, the EHS is running an endorsement project. This Congress is already endorsed by the EHS. We check the quality of the event and the diversity and the program, and then when you apply, it is organized by our secretary for Congress, and they apply. We promote in our social media channels to reach out wide audience in the world. So there is a fundamental course. It's in the members area of the website. So if you are a member, you can reach this course. There is 2 sections in inguinal hernia and inguinal hernias and the ventral hernias. It's a good tool for preparing UEMS examinations. So another collaboration with the industry partner, Medtronic. We have hernia base camps already mentioned today. It's an online learning platform hosted within the web server. It's free to all people. It covers the syllabus of the UEMS examinations. There are more than 200 video lectures, so 10 modules of 3 hours each with you can get CME points. Also, there is we have another collaboration with our platinum sponsor, BD Bart. So Hernia U is a virtual hernia university. It's an online platform. It's a website. There are educational lessons and the videos and the online surgical hernia repair sessions they have. And also recently, Listo Academy had the Dynamics company's Listo Academy had the EHS endorsement, and they are organizing a masterclass also endorsed by the EHS. You can join online. Also, we collaborate with the Incision Academy. The EHS endorses the content of the hernia portfolio on the Incision Academy. You can get free access through the member site of the website. So this is an important project. It's running well. It is funded by the European Hernia Society. It is, hernia patient support group. The group has currently more than 5,000, hernia patients, and led by the European Hernia Society Patient Advisory Committee Chair, Mrs. Jackie Bullock. She's there. She will also talk about the group tomorrow in her talk. So the group is very active. We are doing live chats and Ask the Surgeons sessions, and inviting to the experts and questioning them and asking the questions, and they are explaining. 1 hour sessions. They are already our YouTube channel, and patients are very interested with having these conversations and very engaged with them. And also, sorry, I missed something. It's going up. So I'm sorry.
So fast.
There are some videos. I don't want to miss this section because it's very important. Okay. Also, Herniapedia is a EHS project. As we created PubMed of the hernia in online platforms. When you combine, it's very detailed things, and I have a presentation for this. There is a list of the hashtags. We created more than 90 hashtags related to hernia acronyms and hernia techniques and hernia events, everything. So if you combine them, you can reach all the online recent content in the social media about, all the hernia things. So EHS website is very active. You can regularly visit and update yourself for the recent activities of the EHS and the hernia world. Also, this I recommend you to scan this QR code. In the Smart Link, you can reach all things about the hernia. As you see here, they are clickable links. So the website, Congress in Paris, details. You can go direct to their website. So you don't need to search something in the Google or in other search platforms. Everything is here about the EHS. EHS has a large social media presence and is very active. I recommend you to follow our social media channels. So why don't become an EHS member and say, proud I am an EHS. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hakan. Thank you very much. We really appreciate, because we would like to show to our members how much the society is doing for the people, for the patients, and for the educational activities. So as for me, it was a very important presentation, because there is a lot of people, they don't even know how much effort you spend for this and how much you can give to the society. It's fantastic. Thank you very much for this. And I personally would like to also encourage you to use these platforms, to use everything, because this was done for you. So thank you again. And it all will not happen, and it all will not happen. It is just the fresh things, and you see how much the society has been improved in last years, and we see what we can do, we see what we can be a part of, but what is the goal of it, and what is the goal of education is just a topic for our Secretary General, because he is pressing in last year just to do this all, and he's active involvement in it, and really time he spent for this, it's exceptional. And you please come on stage. Secretary General of the EHS and the board.
Thank you very much. I'm honored to be here. I'm humbled to be standing in front of such an illustrious group. I've been battling a virus for the last 10 days, so I'm not my best. So Maciej, we may need to crack open that bottle before the end of my talk just to get me through it. And talking of you and I, we too have a long history together. We've toured a war zone together doing live surgery. I think I've drunk every drink you've given me until I've passed out on more than one occasion. We've shared a bath together. We've slept together. Maybe I should stop now. Yeah? And that's why there's not many pictures of Maciej and I out in the public domain. Sadly, quite a few do exist, but they're not in the public domain. So, the sense and goal of hernia education, and this is perhaps a philosophical talk. It's a little bit of a reminiscence of my own training. A lot of the examples come from the UK, and I apologize for that, but I hope you see that we're not as good as many people see us as being good at, and also you'll realize that perhaps your training systems are better than ours. Now, the goal of hernia education is easy. It's in line with the credo of the European Hernia Society. Our aim is to improve the outcome of patients with a hernia. Whether they have an operation, whether they don't have an operation, that clearly is the goal of hernia education. And it's getting it right first time. There's a lot of rights on that slide, and I'll leave you to read it yourself, but a lot of those rights are in the control of us as surgeons. So the responsibility that we have to get it right is very important. But what about the sense of hernia education? What about trainees, trainers? Where's the drive come? You know, are we just taking enthusiastic people who self-select themselves, or can we select them in some way? Same with the trainers. I'll come back to that too. Where's the money coming from? We're all kind of broke in Europe, and maybe we're going to get more broke. Training, and sadly, often costs money. And how do we identify those that are going to go far and encourage them? And how do we pick up those that are being left behind, that we can bring them along with us? And I cheated a bit. I had a wee chat with Mateusz, and he said, well, what about the Sherpa model? You know, you turn up on a mountain, you meet some bloke who will take you up, who's done it many times before. and then you disappear and never meet again. And sometimes surgical education is a bit like that. You have a short contact with someone and you move on. But surgical training, particularly around hernia in the UK, is pretty much a disaster. To start with, we have no recognition that hernia is a separate subspecialty. Yes, UMS has acknowledged that, but the UK has kind of always been a little bit on the periphery of Europe. And sadly, that is now the situation of trainees who are finishing their general surgical training, that few can tailor, few can manage more complex cases, and when it gets really complex and the emergency stuff, they are sadly at sea. And if you look at the numbers, we like numbers in the UK. So a general surgical trainee, the only hernia operations they have to do is they have to get 50 inguinal hernias. Most achieve that, but as soon as they get to 50, they're so busy trying to sort out all their other operative numbers that they don't actually progress in hernia surgery. But in a recent survey of trainees about to finish, there was 111 trainees, 109 of them, so virtually all of them, said that they would continue undertaking hernia surgery with very little training. And this is a paper that's already a few years old, but it stresses the problems that we're having in hernia surgery. When I started hernia surgery, there really was only open tissue repairs. That's all we had, and I'll come back to that shortly. And so it's kind of sad that in the UK in the last few years, we've had to commission a report into what can we do about surgical training, because it's actually pretty bad. And clearly there are some aims there to try and work on what's happening. Now, doctor comes from the Roman times. It's derived from the Latin doctio. Who knows what that means? Shout it out. Anyone? I teach. It means I teach. It doesn't mean I heal, I don't make better, I care. Doctor means I teach. And that's been the situation for thousands of years, but we have paid lip service at best to the ability to teach. And not surprisingly, in the Royal College report, there needs to be a lot of work put into trainers to make sure that the right people, they're qualified, and it's not just they can turn up if they want, it's mandatory training. At the same time, trainers need to be supported to do their job and meet with trainees and undertake the progress. Now, there's many recommendations in the report, but here's just a few. We are based on a time-based learning, but perhaps we should be more competence-based. If you go through the system more quickly, fantastic. If you need more time, you can get more time. The problem is it's very hard to slow up a trainee that's underperforming, so they finish with an incomplete process. Targets at every level, and that's something that the EHS is trying to focus on too. Short-term targets. What's the knowledge? What's the clinical skill? What's the personality that we need to work at to achieve what we want to do? And the aim would be that by the time you are finished, in whatever specialty or subspecialty you're in, you could deal with the majority of things. And I'll come back to that in a little while too. But as you know, there's numerous barriers for implementation, and we've already mentioned the training problems. I ran a hernia fellowship, but at least half of the time that the hernia fellow was with me, they were doing emergency surgery, so away from hernia training. We're not very good at getting the right trainee to the right operating list, for example. Simulation has been expensive and relatively primitive up till now. The European Working Directive was a disaster for the UK because the UK follows laws. We like queuing and we follow laws. So training time was decimated and trainees were physically thrown out the hospital if they stayed an hour longer because of the penalties put on the hospital. And this last one, the outsourcing to the private sector, I'll come back to. Now, COVID has been a big problem for our trainees, and you can see our pre-COVID numbers, our post-COVID numbers. We're up to about 90% of our pre-COVID numbers now. So we're getting back. We lost a lot of staff. We haven't managed to open all our theatres because of lack of staff. Some of the numbers at the bottom are a bit dodgy because of recoding, but look at the ones at the top, primary inguinal hernia. We're still roughly 10% down on numbers. But because of the waiting times now, a lot of these patients are being outsourced to the private sector, where trained surgeons work alone, and so those operations are taken out of training opportunity. 2/3 of operations that used to be potentially a training operation have been taken away from trainees. So in the UK, we are in the midst of a bit of a disaster, to put it. So here's a bit of a laugh now. You can laugh at me, and I did this yesterday when I was thinking about finishing off my talk. This is my logbook, which we had to handwrite. And just to put in the context of where I finished my medical degree. I did 1 year as a house officer, as it was called, which was a general dog's body, filling in paper, running around, begging radiologists to do scans, chasing up blood results, doing the blood results, and so on. Then I spent a year, 6 months orthopedic, 6 months in a surgical accident and emergency, and then I did 8 months of general surgery. And this is how we coded our logbooks. A was if you assisted the operation. PA was if you did the operation but were assisted by a more senior surgeon. P was if you did the operation yourself. Your boss may still be in the theatre, but they wouldn't be scrubbed, or they'd be in the coffee room and wander in and out. And S was if you supervised a more junior surgeon. So in my first 8 months, that was my exposure to hernia surgery. And obviously I assist a few, I'd do a few under assistance, go back to assisting, then get an easy one to do. It wasn't like I assisted 23 and then did 21, but that was the process. I then moved to Edinburgh, the next scale up. It was called the SHO3. I did 4 months in the breast unit, and then I went back to 8 months of general surgery. And this is a little bit like see one, do one, teach one, the apprenticeship system that started. I think on my first day, my boss assisted me with the first hernia and said, I think you know what you're doing. And then I started just performing them by myself. And then within a year, or just over a year, I was supervising a more junior surgeon to repair inguinal hernias. Now at that time, I was either doing a modified Bassini with interrupted linen sutures, inserted with a Mayo needle. And for the young ones, you've probably never heard of a Mayo needle, and you've probably never seen a linen suture. Or if we were a bit more clever, we did a Maloney darn. And again, that's something that you probably haven't heard much. But there are a few Liechtensteins in there, and I'll come back to that shortly. Now, there's my operative logbook. You probably can't see it, but if I enlarge it slightly, and you can see on the 1st of October 1991, that's 14 months into general surgical training. On that list, I did an open left inguinal hernia, an open bilateral. Remember, this is 91, pre-laparoscopic year. And then I supervised my first right inguinal hernia. And that's probably not imaginable today in practice. And I guess even worse, although that's my total, having done 5 emergency hernias, I was now doing the emergency hernias by myself, and very shortly supervising an enthusiastic young trainee who was with me, who's now the Regius Professor of Surgery in Edinburgh. But in 16 months of surgery, that was my hernia exposure. Now that's a dream for trainees today. I did have to work my socks off. I was paid quite well for the first 48 hours. The next 64 hours, I was paid 1/3 of my salary to do those. So we did a lot of work, but I got my numbers within a year. I still had 7 more years of surgical training to go. Now, the other funny thing I did, which you might think was unusual, but I introduced the Liechtenstein repair to the southeast of Scotland. Early 1992, I went to a conference. I heard about mesh repair. I was sitting beside my old dad, who was a surgeon about to retire. He'd worked many years abroad. And I turned to my dad and I said, what do you think of this mesh repair? I was conscious that about 10 to 15% of the hernias I was repairing were recurrent. And he said, oh son, I've been doing mesh repairs for hernias since the mid-60s. Now his mesh was, because he worked in the Southwest Pacific, he went into a lady's shop, he bought a powder blue nylon nightdress, and he cut it up into little bits, he sterilized it, and he sewed it into patients. And so he'd been doing it for years. So I thought, well, I need to research this. Now this is the next funny bit of history. How many of you have heard of used Index Medicus? Okay, a couple of hands. So this was the last year of Index Medicus. This was PubMed in my era. So every month, the Index Medicus would get all the journals, they would type in the titles, and the authors would appear in that book, sectioned under like hernia, colorectal cancer, and what have you. They'd be weeks to months to years behind, but you would go to the library, you would flick through it, you would find a reference, you would write it down. Then you would head off to all the bound journals, and if you had 20 references in your paper, you'd have to have 20 of those books around the library. So it was like going to the gym. You'd photocopy them, and most of my biggest single expense was photocopy money, because you had to pay for it. And I read the paper, and I went back to the hospital, and I said, I think we should do mesh repairs. Our recurrence rates are too high. And they said, fine. Ethicon was actually an Edinburgh company, although it had already been taken over by Johnson & Johnson. So we had Merceline, and I started doing Liechtenstein's, having read a paper, and my boss said, sounds like a good idea, get going. That was my training. And I'm not sure why I'm standing here talking about training with that background. But obviously the EHS training pathway, which you heard a little bit about, some of that throughout training applies to all of us. Our training never really finishes. And there's things out there that we can learn from and continue to learn from. But the aim of the EHS is to also help you have a step-by-step approach to achieve the final UM's exam. Is that coming from the top down? Is it trainers telling you what to do? Or is that your enthusiasm as a trainee to make it happen? And that's one of the difficulties, is incentivizing people. Now, there are 4 types of surgeons. I don't think you can see this very well, but I stole this from Eric Pollai's talk on Monday about surgeons. 4 types of surgeons. Left to right is awareness, bottom to top is skill level. And we can have low skill, low awareness, low skill, high awareness. Now, that's not too bad. We're not very good technically, but we're aware we're not very good, so we're careful what we do. We can have high skill and low awareness. Sometimes we can do the wrong operation on the wrong patient, but because we do it so well, we get away with it. But the aim is to be high skill, high awareness. The real danger is to be at the bottom. You've got low skill and low awareness. You read a paper like I did, you introduce the practice, and then you end up in national and international news. And this is nothing against TAR. This is against people with low skill and low awareness who embrace something and end up causing a lot of chaos. So we need to stop that. But do we take anyone up and try and help them get to the top? Do we, as the EHS or authorities, dictate to trainees what they should do? And who does it make feel good? Certainly all the courses we do as trainers, I feel really good. I feel I'm imparting knowledge. And hopefully the trainees feel good too. But that's sometimes the problem. You know, a Sherpa will help us up. There's an amazing story of a climber that had to be carried off by a Sherpa. And that we've all been in that situation where our boss has bailed us out of a disaster, or we've bailed our trainees out of a disaster. Is there a different way? What about a Mr. Miyagi way? All right, see someone with desire, passion, wanting to go somewhere and becomes their master. A slightly different version. What makes up a surgeon? Can we select surgeons by looking at attributes and before we go into surgery say, actually, maybe you shouldn't be doing it, and actually you haven't thought about it, but you actually should be doing surgery. So there's a recent paper on this. Senior surgeons were surgeons who had finished their training. They weren't old people with grey hair, they're just surgeons. And through a complicated process, they came up with 24 competencies, and then they had a huge number of surgeons and trainees rate those competencies. I hope you can read those, but those are the technical skills, the cognitive abilities, the personality characteristics. Anyone have any idea which was ranked the most important selection criteria for a surgeon and the most important criteria for a surgeon who had finished their training? Personality. Well, it was in the personality characteristics. Okay, we'll come back to that shortly. So these are the scores, and interestingly, for selection, generally all of those were ranked quite highly, but you can see that technical skills tended to be ranked not quite so highly. But the attribute that was most important was integrity. Integrity is honesty, and we heard a little bit about truth. It's sticking to morals or principles even when people try to make them change. That's integrity. And while passion for surgery was not ranked quite so high for trained surgeons, it was the second most important factor in selection of a surgeon. So I'll leave you to read that paper yourself. But some interesting insights into what's going on. Now, if you look at the UK, they have produced a short CV, 2 sides of A4, personal statement, and they have a 10-minute interview which they described the equivalent of speed dating. They do have references, but those references are not looked at until they are potentially offered a job, just to check that they're okay. And then they enter an 8-year program, which is a fixed 8-year term, and they're expected to be finished at the end of it. And clearly, the group in the UK are saying, well, okay, that's how we're selecting them to date. We probably get away maybe 5 times out of 10, 8 times out of 10, I don't know. But there needs to be a more careful selection process going into surgery. The other thing that EHS and many others have been grappling with is what happens after a training course. You know, you might go to a cadaver workshop, see something new. You may go to a hands-on course, see something new, or see something you've done but felt that you need a little bit of help with. And then you go home, but you're not trained. You may have a local mentor or proctor, but you may not. And so one of the key elements has been standardization of steps. And for those of you who wish to get into standardization of steps, I recommend Alfred's surgery to it, set up by our Secretary for Education, although it's been a private undertaking. And it was called Alfred's surgery because Alfred was the sort of father figure of Batman and Robin, the person that you turn to ask for help. Can technology help? Well, we've heard a little bit about that too, and this is a paper hot off the press from the BJS Open. The senior author is Stephen Newell, who's someone who works in Edinburgh, but he's not a surgeon. He's really a human behaviours doctor, but not a medical doctor. And he was the one, along with my colleague Simon Patterson-Brown, that introduced NOTS, the non-operative technical skills concept, which is all about safety. And they've done a pretty big review. As you know, there's lots of methods out there. They're generating a variety of metrics. We don't know quite what the metrics mean, and we don't know if you can fiddle with those metrics to improve evidence of training. But that's clearly something that's not far away and is clearly here to stay. So, can we improve selection at entrance? Can we deselect people who are struggling or are clearly not suited for the environment they're going to be in? There's a desire to standardize and make it generic, but within that, you want to be able to help those that are struggling, help those that are going on to greater things. And I guess, like an old master, you need mentors. And I would say that, sadly, a number of my mentors are sick or are dead, but I am very grateful to those who have helped me along the way. And remember that learning is for life. Now, we've known about the problems of hernia education for a long time, and this guy died in 1971, a long time before there was any fancy hernia surgery. And yet he knew that he would let most people take his gallbladder out, but in the London area there was only one surgeon who he'd let fiddle with his groin. And that's where it is today. We know who we would go to and who we wouldn't, but we let those that we wouldn't go to carry on their practice. So we need to educate us all. So I don't know if I have any answers. I hope it's been more entertaining than perhaps educational. But we do need to train surgeons to the benefit of patients and the benefit of ourselves. It's quite sad to see younger trainees coming through, finishing their training, starting work, and being stressed and giving up because they haven't quite completed their training and ending up in environments that they may not feel supported with. We do have a lot more work to get hernia as a specialty. We do need to train trainers. We don't have natural gift. And unfortunately, that's an investment of lots of things, including time and money. We need clear pathways, clear endpoints, validated assessments, and obviously individualized where possible. And that's part of where the EHS has been trying to go. See you all in Paris. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Great lecture as always. I probably understand you better than anyone here because all those things you mentioned at the beginning with Maciej, I was there too, so I know. Okay, it is my honor to announce our last speaker for today. I will be brief because I don't want to take any of his time. Just to share my memory, when I first heard his lecture during the Copenhagen EHS Congress in 2022, I believe, after the lecture I got shivers all over my body and I didn't sleep for the next night. It is so good. Ladies and gentlemen, please greet Professor Todd Heniford. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I was asked to give, and this is really incredible. The number of people who show up in Poland for this, compared to the size of the United States, this dwarfs what we do in the American Hernia Society as far as our attendance. This session, and listening to these wonderful speakers, I am awed to be here, and I so appreciate it. I was asked to talk about why I became a hernia surgeon, and I spun this a bit and I'll talk about that for just a second, but what I really want to talk about is why you should become a hernia surgeon and why we should be dedicated to it. Here are my disclosures, Mark. Important, I put my disclosures up there. But here are my real disclosures. If you really want to dig into what my disclosures are and to whom I owe my career, and to whom that has developed this talk and the talks that I've given in the past and in the future, the young people that I work with. Without question, it's the reason I'll still practice. Without question, it's the reason I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. And it's these young people, and we've trained some amazing young people. And but I will tell you, Yuri Nowitzki, these people that are on this slide are just as damn good as you were when you become, an icon in surgery in the world. But these young people, they come smart, they come motivated, and you didn't want to be a hernia surgeon, and they do. And so it is really quite incredible. I had no intention of being a hernia surgeon. Who grows up to be a hernia surgeon? Nobody would raise their hand. What I grew up to be is I wanted to be a professional American football player. My whole young life was dedicated to sports, and I wanted to play American football. I played in high school, I played in college, I played on the #1 team in the country. And when I figured out that I wasn't fast enough to play professional football, it broke my heart. Luckily, I did reasonably well in school, and so I could become a surgeon. And I went to medical school, and like you, I became a surgeon, and I had no intention of doing hernias. Andrew showed some of his case logs in doing hernia, and this is where hernia was when I was a young surgeon. If you look at my first year, my first postgraduate year, I did almost 50% of all the hernias that I did in my training. And that's where I learned how to do inguinal hernias. Inguinal hernias was an intern case. You did have an attending, or most often what you had, much as Andrew described, is you'd have a 5th-year resident who was our chief resident taking an intern through the case. The 5th year was responsible for hernia surgery teaching. As a 2nd year, we did the ventral hernias. You got to get into the abdomen, you did a bit of adhesiolysis, we did a primary care repair, or most often what we did was a bridging Marlex repair. In my 3rd and 4th year were more specialty training. That's where I did thoracic, where I did pediatrics, where I did private group practices, and you see that I did very few hernias. And then when I became a chief resident, you can see my teaching cases. I had no idea how to perform hernia repair, but I was expected to teach it. But in our institution, it was just a hernia. It was the case that you would do, that the junior resident would learn how to tie, learn how to place a stitch, learn how to put a stitch through the pubis, run it along Cooper's ligament, transition to the inguinal ligament, and that's what we did. When I became a young attending, if someone had walked into my clinic with this hernia, you would have looked at this person and you would have said that, a great trauma surgeon took care of you. Beautiful skin graft on your abdomen. Put some cocoa butter on that. Put some lotion on that. Take care of that skin graft. And we'll see you some other time, because we couldn't fix them. And now we can fix these, and we do this every day in our hospital. I love this slide, and I've shown it several times before, but I had a young surgeon who is a sarcoma surgeon and an advanced colorectal surgeon from Australia, came and spent 2 weeks with us in our hospital, and she and I became friends, and she started making fun of me, calling myself a hernia specialist. She's like, well, what the hell is a hernia specialist? What is it truly when you call yourself a hernia specialist? There is no specialization in hernia. And so she sent me this card, and you can read it, where surgical specialist, and then of course, we unicorns need to stick together, and then of course a surgical specialist is talking to the horse like, is that a plunger on your head? Again, just making fun of me. But I will say that when you think about it, some surgeons would back away from saying, I'm a hernia specialist. I don't cure cancer. Massive traumas, I don't take care of those either. I don't take out part of the liver, and I don't give somebody a kidney, I don't give somebody a new life. They're just like, you don't want to call yourself a hernia surgeon. And so it's so true that a president of the American Hernia Society, one of my fellow someone that I had trained, was a president of the American Hernia Society, and he was reported to me as true in a cocktail party, and a person came up to him and said, "You're a surgeon, right? I heard you're a surgeon. What kind of surgeon are you?" And he said, "Well, I'm a hernia surgeon." They were like, "Oh, a hernia surgeon," and turned and walked away. That president of the American Hernia Society wanted to change the name of the American Hernia Society to like, what is it, the American Core Health or something Society. I don't even know what the hell that is, because they were embarrassed to be a hernia surgeon. And so I'll break it down for you like this. When I see patients like this in my office, and this is not just a ventral hernia, this is a peristomal hernia. And there's a Band-Aid on the patient's side over there, and that actually, if you want to make this really hard, that's a mesh fistula that's draining through that site there. And if you look at her hernia, and you go through this hernia scan and you start looking at what's important, one of the things I'm going to look at is I'm going to look at the solid organs. Well, there's the liver and there are the kidneys, of course. And then as you get below the liver, how much intestine's on the outside? Well, it's a jailbreak after that. And essentially the only intestine left in the abdomen is right there. And then there's her spleen. And so just to give you a little history, so she's had this hernia for 16 years. She has 2 sisters that are with her and her mother that is with her. They spend 24 hours a day with her because she can't get out of bed by herself to go to the bathroom. They refuse to allow her to have a Foley catheter because of the risk of infection. They spend their day, this has taken over the family. And so people say they can't lose weight. She lost 38 pounds, she got Botox, and then we operated on her. And this is what she looks like on the operating room table as we operated on her. We moved her, we resected her mesh fistula, we moved her ostomy to the other side, we closed her abdomen, and this is what she looks like exactly 6 weeks after her surgery. And her abdomen, the Botox is still working, it's stretched a bit, so her abdomen's a bit larger. And on the 7th week after this, she had the first job that she's had in 16 years. This patient came back, and this is about 3 months later. My nurse came to my office on a Monday morning. There was over 20 people in our waiting room, and her family lives over 4 hours from my institution. And she came into my waiting room, and so I walked out, and her and her family and 4 cars just wanted to hug the office staff. They walked through, they hugged the office staff, and they got in the cars and drove home. Hernia surgeon, I'm okay with it. Patients like this that you operate on, who's just over and over again told that they're unfixable. You see her back in clinic, and I ask her, what are you going to do now? And it's incredible. She said, I'm going to go swimming. Because that was one of her goals, and to get back in her life. This is a woman from Singapore who's got 12 fistulas and is beginning to have significant liver dysfunction due to TPN toxicity, and we fix her. Hernia surgeon, I'm okay with it. But I'll tell you, when I'm sitting in the back of the room today, and at the first lecture today, I'm sitting in the back of the room, and I just said, this is incredible. I can bestow on you my enthusiasm and my want and my desire to be a great hernia surgeon, but I don't have to do it to this crowd if you're given your days to come here and in this number. What hernia surgeons, however, have had a problem with is our ego. This is a treatise on hernia repair with a new process for its radical cure that was written 150 years ago. And what the author says in this is, we will close our remarks on the radical cure of the about all that is known on the subject, believing there will never be a better method than the authors. Hernia surgeons, we believe over and over and over again that we are just so good at hernias and there is no defeat in it. But of course you can fall back to this article where it says he cannot estimate with even appropriate correctness the number of hernia cases that have followed his own operations, because many patients will, under such circumstances, apply to other operators. And of course, this was written in 1901. My first meeting at the American Hernia Society, someone stood up and over 400 cases of ventral hernia essentially said no recurrences, 1 minor wound complication, and everyone is lovely. And I sat back and I said, whatever we're doing, we should stop it and do that for eternity, because that's perfection. And we know that didn't exist. What we really needed to do, and this is an article that was from JAMA, from a surgeon who was the president of the British Medical Association 105 years ago, and essentially said techniques that we do in the operating room as surgeons are very important. But what we really have to do is get over what we believe our experience is telling us and use science to improve surgery. And we've seen a huge growth in articles and peer-reviewed articles in the literature. Over 17,000 papers on ventral hernia. If you look at the growth in hernia articles in general, we now publish more than 4 times as many as we did 16 years ago. Interest in hernia repair and the application of science is real. And this is something I wrote for one of my fellows. He came out and he said, when you're looking at a hernia patient, can you just write down kind of your thought processes and the things you're thinking about? So I wrote this down for Nick, and he then made a slide for me, which I show you. But then I went back through my slide deck, and this is from like 15 years ago, and this is from like 10 years ago. Even my own considerations of hernias, my thought changed radically. You know, what do you do with a hernia? What are you technically going to do with a hernia? This is a slide from about 15 years ago, and then this is now, it's even like become animated. I've moved these things all around, but all the things that I'm doing has changed dramatically. One of the things I think we have to accept, and those of you who want to be hernia surgeons, when you talk to surgeons, about being a hernia specialist, our hernia patients are as complicated as any patient that we'll see in general surgery. The people who develop complications and develop wounds and have it end up with a hernia are like the transplant patients who have complications. They're like the colorectal patients who have complications. They're the gynecology patients who have, we're seeing patients who are teed themselves up. They have separated themselves from the herd. They are their worst patients, and they're in our office. This is a paper that one of our residents, Sean Maloney, wrote a number of years ago. This is 775 consecutive component separations. And if you start looking at these patients, one of the things that I do when I write a paper is I have to write a paper and I have to include everybody, and then I say what the results are with everybody. But when I'm looking at a set of patients, and you'll have patients who have massive hernias and patients who are very, very complicated. And so if you start skimming off, if I want to find out what I'm doing is really working, you skim off some of the most difficult patients and see if the core group of patients, what I'm doing is working. So in this paper we eliminated patients with diabetes, smokers, BMI of greater than 35, and then non-contaminated. So we had to do the non-contaminated BMI of less than 35, but if you look at it, that's only 22% of the patients. So 78% of these patients were complicated. And then we looked at over 900 patients who came into our office, and the at-risk patient, it was about 77%. And then if you make them a little more complicated, really big hernias, recurrent hernias, flank hernias, unusual hernias, now you're talking about 86% of the people that we see. These patients are complicated. Compliment yourself as a hernia surgeon. You're taking the complex patients who had complications, who therefore have complications with a hernia repair. Can we do better? One of the things I'm super proud of as an institution of hernia surgeons is you look at how honest we're now becoming. This is work that Sam did with Al Windsor in the UK, looking at hundreds of patients, hundreds of papers with a recurrence rate of 24%. Looking at the national database, if you look at the number of patients who have a recurrence going out to 4 years, 37%. In the United States, I frequently have surgeons who will say, Todd, the complications you talk about, those recurrences you talk about, these issues that you talk about, I just don't see any of this. Paper. This comes from the American College of Surgeons, the NISQIP with the American College of Surgeons. You look at almost 500,000 patients in 2012. The unplanned readmission rate was 5.7%. Number one was vascular surgery. Number two, guess what number two was? Ventral hernia repair. Complicated patient. And John Fisher, looking at the readmission database, National Readmission Database, 19% of patients will be readmitted within a year after their ventral hernia repair. And all of this becomes super expensive. Ben Palouse and his group and Katie Schlosser looked at what it costs for us to take care of patients and what 1% difference in recurrence would cost us or save us. So the application of science. We do have a long way to go. The technical considerations, you'll also hear about it in this hall in the next 24 hours, really quite important. But how do you take care of patients like this regularly and expect good outcomes? You can take a patient like this who had a colorectal procedure, developed a wound infection, and then went on to this, has a stoma, has a left upper quadrant fistula that you can't see, but you can take care of them and do this relatively well and expect good outcomes. Another patient, after a ventral hernia repair and a missed small bowel aneurysm, again, with the application of science. Yes, Andrew said that you can have a good surgeon who may do a procedure, perhaps it could have been a better procedure, but they're just so talented in the operating room, they can perhaps get by with it. I don't like the terms getting by with it, but we know what a skilled surgeon's all about. Super important, but if you're going to take care of patients like this, what you want is the whole piece, the whole puzzle. You want to put everything together. If you're going to call yourself a specialist, you need to do something special. You have to be ready to stand up to the demands of being a specialist. You have to put everything. I talk to my patients when they come in and they say, they come in for my reputation. I tell them, when I'm standing over you in the operating room, my reputation means nothing. When I'm standing over you for 3 hours, my reputation goes back to zero and it starts over again. You have to redevelop it every day. And as surgeons, what we can't do, we want to go to the operating room. We see patients in the office, and what we want to do is skip over and go straight to surgery. If you're going to be a specialist, you have to become like a highly reliable organization. If you think about like the complexity of an aircraft carrier and landing planes, you think about the complexity of just plane flight. In the United States, 2.3 million people fly in the United States every day. Over 800 million people will fly in the United States every year. When the last time someone died on an American aircraft, company's plane, anywhere in the world? 2009. I feel pretty good when I fly. I want my patients to feel pretty good when I operate on them. We know the right things to do if you're going to be a specialist. This is John Maxwell, who is a motivational speaker, and he talks about the effectiveness equals quality times acceptance. We understand quality. We understand the things that we need to do. We accept them. But you have to add something else into this, and that's performance. And I believe we're not just reconstructing abdomens. As a surgeon, we have a real chance to reconstruct lives. It's been talked about twice so far today, but I think this is super special. Ferdinand Kocherling has spent an awful lot of his time, along with others, to develop a specialty board with the European Board of Surgery. You can take the examination, the oral examination, the written examination, and you can separate yourself and truly become a hernia specialist and be acknowledged for it. We don't have this in the United States, and hopefully we will actually tail on to what's been done in Europe. I love this slide, and this is one of Newt's slides talking about education and about separating yourself and about becoming a specialist. And of course, you can read the book Outlier, where Malcolm Gladwell talks about 10,000 hours in dedication to becoming a specialist or doing something special. How can you become a true specialist in hernia repair? Well, one of the things is to do this. Come to institutions like this, talk to surgeons, learn from surgeons, go directly to the surgeon and talk to them. Another is to read the papers, is to educate yourself. And there was a famous book which talked about education and the use of computer chess. And Many of you will know about Stockfish. The way Stockfish was one of the first and best computer chess games. And how they made it an expert, an artificial intelligence expert, is it allowed Stockfish to review all the masters' matches throughout history. Over and over and over again, they loaded these masters' matches in, and Stockfish learned from it. And indeed, Stockfish, several years ago, was the first computer chess game to beat the international human champion. So can you become an expert by learning the literature, by learning what masters have done and what masters have reported? And I will say that there's no question. I took this picture in preparation for a lecture previously, and I think there's no question I've become a much better surgeon by learning from those around me, by surgeons from all over the world who have taught me how to be a really good surgeon. And I continue today learning from these folks, and I'm pleased to call many of them my friends. You look pretty good, dude. I'm just going to tell you. That's like... Some of you may have heard of AlphaZero. AlphaZero is Google's chess game, AI chess game, taught differently. What artificial intelligence, what the Google guys did at artificial intelligence, is they taught it the rules, AlphaZero the rules, and had it play itself over and over and over again, learning its own weaknesses. And then it had AlphaZero played Stockfish. And AlphaZero beat Stockfish 28 times in a row. So yes, in comparison to these games, you can learn surgery and become an expert by reading the world literature and learning what experts have done in the past. And much like what Marc Miserez said earlier, perhaps the best way to learn is to learn from your own mistakes. Tracking yourself and tracking your outcomes and giving yourself a true report card through a number of these registries that are now available. So what makes a surgical expert? What makes a surgeon a hernia center special, a hernia surgeon special? There are a number of papers that actually, many of them have come from the European Hernia Society. And in fact, Maarten, I know you're senior author on this paper. We've done very little with that, and I think Yuri's going to change that, as a matter of fact, with the American Hernia Society. But you guys really have put the guidelines together, not only these guidelines that you talked about and that others have talked about, but also what it takes to become a surgical expert. And it does fall back to becoming a highly reliable organization. And much of this paper that they put out falls back to this. And it is about quality surgery, development of measures, and measure reliability. And when you find a problem, intervene. I've made my professional career in doing exactly this. We've written a number of papers as we've done quality improvement. We've tracked prospectively 22,000 patients. And we fall back and look and see where the problems are and how we can improve. What I'm actually showing in each one of these papers, when I thought I was a good surgeon, I could be better. In each one of these papers, we made ourselves better by demonstrating how flawed we were. There is no perfect, but what I try to go for is excellentism. There is truly a word, excellentism. This is a goal that you'll never reach, but trying to act with excellence. I gave a paper in India once, and they asked me to talk about this topic. And you see the things that I have marked out here. At the end of my talk, I went back and I said, what is the most important aspect of the changes that I've seen in abdominal reconstruction? Creativity, science, technology, and measured excellence. And what I said I thought was the most important was culture change. The culture change to allow us to stand up and say that we're hernia surgeons. The culture change that we embrace each other and learn from each other. And it's completely changed hernia surgery in my lifetime. I showed you these people. And every one of them have embraced becoming a hernia surgeon. Every one of these people believe that it is important. And so why has specialization in hernia grown so much? I love this quote by an English philosopher, Chesterton. Men did not love Rome because she was great, Rome was great because they loved her. These people have dedicated themselves to hernia, and through their love of hernia, they have made hernia great. And it's also like culture change. It really is quite incredible how people embrace when I was my earliest time at the European Hernia Society, it was more competitive. And now people embrace each other. And you'll see the warmth of people and how we greet each other and how we treat each other. This is the American Hernia Society, a list of the past, just past, and future presidents of the American Hernia Society. You're talking about like people like in a meritocracy. They've earned this presidency through merit. Men, women, but one of the things that really is quite incredible, and I think that the people in the American Hernia Society and their introductory lectures this past year missed, is that none of these people are born in the United States. Diversity, equity, inclusion, we don't care where you're born, we don't care who you are. This is really quite remarkable. But taking care of these patients, this has been the driving force in my career. Being able to teach young people and then drive their passion to be abdominal wall reconstruction surgeons. And the young people in our country are voting with their feet. And indeed, and I'll skip to this slide, this is from our match. We have a fellowship match. We have one fellowship position. And the least number of people we've had apply for our one fellowship position in the last 4 years is 128. Young people are voting with their feet to become hernia surgeons and to specialize in abdominal reconstruction. And why do I think that's so? When I talk to these young people, it's about the case complexity. They want something that's challenging. They want surgical excellence. They want mentors. They want approachable heroes. They want technology and the growth in technology. They want research opportunities. They want to become a master. They want to be part of a team. And they want board certification. It's now become truly a specialty. And our young people are aspiring to this in the United States. So as I close, I will say, I started my residency 35 years ago. I had zero intention to become a hernia surgeon. And it's amazing where the path will lead you and the passion that you have for surgery will lead you. And I wouldn't change this for anything. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Todd. Thank you very much for all the speakers. I think this session was something like to open your minds, less about science, more about some experience and some authentic enthusiasm. Thank you for this. This is for the moment now the end. Please, we now all proceed to the building, which is 150 meters from here for the welcome cocktail. And we hope you will enjoy also this part of the evening. And we will come back to the audience room tomorrow morning. I'm doing it with purpose. Tomorrow morning means at 10, not at 7. So thank you very much. Thank you for the audience. Thank you for the speakers. Thank you for all of you. It was a great session. Thank you very much.